Shalom and welcome back to the Rashi Nosh. I'm Pastor Matt.
And I'm Kara.
Every week we like to get together and have just a little nosh, just a little bite of Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, the famous French medieval rabbi that is sort of the basis of what we call the Peshat level, the basis textual level of the Hebrew language for studying the Torah. And so we always suggest, if you want to get into deeper Torah study from a Jewish perspective, start with Rashi. He's kind of the basis. And we love to suggest to people, before you get into anything deeper, spend at least a year with Rashi. That's what we always suggest to people. It's a good foundation for you. So, as always, we have a wonderful comment from Rashi this week on the Torah portion. And this week we are in Parashat Noach. This is the story of the flood and the ark, all the animals. Of course, our kids love to hear about these stories. I can't even count of how many children's rooms or nurseries and congregations or whatever that are painted with Noah's Ark and the animals and everything. Because it's a wonderful story for kids, except when we talk about God's judgment. When we speak to children, of course, we give them a kid's version of this story, the big boat and all the animals and Noah and his family. But this is definitely a story of divine judgment and something that we really need to look at. Now, what Rashi points out this week in verse 7 of chapter 7 of Genesis is focusing on faith, the faith of Noah. Now, Noah is described in the beginning of this week's Torah portion as a man who is blameless, righteous in his generation. In fact, Rashi, in an earlier verse, in chapter 6, verse 9, asks the question, if Noah is seen as righteous in his generation, would he have been seen as righteous in maybe a different generation? Would he have been considered as righteous in, say, Abraham's generation or another generation? But that's a discussion for another time. It's something that we looked at last year. This year, we want to look in this Torah cycle at faith and action. Because Rashi says in verse 7 of chapter 7, Noah went in to the ark, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him because of the waters of the flood. Now, of course, this sounds like a self-evident statement. It's pretty obvious. Of course, they went in because of the waters of the flood. But what's interesting here is the word because in the Hebrew. So Rashi says, Noah entered the ark, quote, because of the waters of the flood, closed quote. This indicates that Noah hesitated to enter until the flood waters forced him to enter. Rashi explains that this demonstrates a weakness in Noah's faith. He had faith, obviously. He built the ark. He spent 120 years as a 600-year-old man building this ark with his sons and their families. But the whole idea is that he believed God, but he didn't have that translate into action of entering the ark until the flood waters actually began to rise, until the rains were coming down heavily. That reminds me of the book of James in the New Testament, where it says that faith without accompanying action is dead. It's useless to us. It's one thing to believe something. It's another thing for that to translate into an action. And for Noah, we know that he had the belief. He's called a preacher of righteousness in the Bible. So we know that he was letting people know that they needed to enter. Now, it just so happens that no one entered except him and his sons and their wives and his wife. So as he is going in, it is because the waters are coming. Now, this also reminds me in a slightly different way of faith and accompanying action that we're going to get into a little bit further on in the Bible, in the book of Exodus, where the prince of the tribe of Judah, actually, according to Jewish tradition, walks into the Red Sea before it parts, because he knew it was going to part. So if our faith is not accompanied by action, is it really worth much? I think it's important for our children, our grandchildren. If you're in leadership in a congregation, the people in your congregation need to see this. They need to see your faith at work, not just when it's easy, but they need to see your faith at work when it's difficult. And maybe we don't wait until the last minute to have it proved to us, oh yes, the flood is really coming, we should get in. Maybe we need to have a complete faith, as it says here. Rashi says that Noah had faith, but it was not complete. He didn't believe completely. This reminds me, of course, of Maimonides and his 13 attributes or 13 statements of faith in the Jewish way of looking at things. Number 12 is, I believe in perfect faith in the coming of the Messiah, and even if he delay, I will wait for him every day. This is a perfect faith. This is a faith with an accompanying action. So maybe this week, let's look for ways for our faith to be borne out in action. Not to try to prove something to ourselves that we really believe what we say we believe, but for it to be the fruit, the natural outgrowth of our faith. Like we have said in the past in youth ministry, it's not just about talk, it's about a walk. So let's make sure as parents, as grandparents, we're not grandparents yet, but someday maybe we will be grandparents. But for those of us that are involved in children's ministry, youth ministry, if you're a teacher, if you're a pastor or a rabbi, whatever your vocation, no doubt there are people that are looking to you as an example, especially because you're a believer. Let your faith be a light and let it be accompanied by action. Remember, faith without the accompanying action is dead, and we don't want a dead faith. So, hoping that floodwaters are not coming, although in recent weeks and months we have had some flooding in our area. Thank you for your prayers. We've had some water damage in our home due to recent hurricanes, but it's nothing that the Lord can't handle and nothing that can't be fixed. The family is safe, and thank you all for checking in with us with these recent storms in the last few weeks. Thank you so very much for joining us here at the Rashi Nosh, and every week it is our joy to be with you. Keep opening the Torah and studying it, and find some action to accompany your faith. God bless you, and shalom.